The brief commentary on Sura Ibrahim. Interpretation of the 4 verse of Sura Ibrahim. The Holy Qur'an was sent down in pure Arabic, but the Arab tribes spoke different dialects, and therefore Allah Almighty sent it down in several readings. It is reported that Umar al-Khattab said, "Once during the life of the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, I heard Hisham Hakim read Sura Al-Furqan, listen to his reading. And it turned out that he was reading her in many ways that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, did not teach me. I was ready to pounce on him during prayer, but I restrained myself, and when he uttered the words of greeting, I grabbed him by the cloak and asked, 'Who taught you to read that surah, the recitation of which I heard from you?' He said, 'The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, taught me to read it.' I said, 'You are lying, because the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, taught me to read it differently from how you read it.' And then I brought him to the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and said, 'I heard how this man reads Surah Al-Furqan know the way you taught me to read it.' The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, 'Let him go.' And you read, O Hisham." He read it as I had already heard from him, and the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "So it was sent down." Then he said, "Now you read, Umar." I read it as he taught me, and the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "So it was sent down." Verily, this Qur'an was sent down in 7 readings. Read it in a way that will be easier for you. The Hadith was reported by Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, At-Tirmizi, and Nasai, and Malik. It is reported from the words of Ibn Abbas that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "Jibril read the Qur'an to me in 1 reading, and I repeated it. Then I asked him to add, and he added until he got to 7 readings." This hadith was narrated by Ahmad, Al-Bukhari, and Muslim. The Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was content that he was allowed to read the Qur'an in 7 readings. Since he knew that usually Arabic words do not have more than 7 different interpretations. Al-Baghavi said, "The most obvious and most reliable an opinion which is consistent with the apparent meaning of the Hadith is that dialects are meant by recitations. This means that the different tribes of the Arabs can read the Qur'an in their own dialect according to their own customs. This applies to Ijma, Izkara, Imalai, Tafkhim, Ishmam, Itmam, Kamza, Talon, and other characteristic features of the dialects. There is an opinion that the Qur'an was first revealed in the dialect of the Quraysh and the full-blooded Arabs who joined them. And then the Arabs were allowed to read it in the dialects they usually use, despite differences in pronunciation and inflection. They were not ordered to switch to the dialect of another tribe, since this would create certain difficulties for them, and because the Arabs were very jealous of the traditions of their tribe. It also made it easier for them to understand the meaning of the revelations. Abu Shama reported this. Of course, for non-Arabs, all dialects of the Arabic language are equal, and therefore it is preferable for them to read and study the Qur'an in 1 dialect, Quraysh. And it would be difficult for the Arabs, who speak the dialect of their tribe from childhood, to switch to the dialect of another tribe, especially if they are allowed to read the revelations in their native dialect. The existence of 7 readings is not an internal contradiction in the Qur'an. The Almighty said, "Do they not think about the Qur'an?" Indeed, if it were not from Allah, then they would find many contradictions in it. The existence of different readings does not mean that every Arab tribe can read the Qur'an in its own dialect without relying on divine guidance. On the contrary, all 7 readings were sent down by Allah, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, taught them to his companions in accordance with what the angel Jibril taught him. This is confirmed by many authentic hadiths. Interpretation of the 17th verse of Sura Ibrahim. It is reported from the words of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "On the day of resurrection, death will be brought in the form of a black and white ram and placed between paradise and hell, and then it will be slaughtered in front of them. And if anyone could die of joy, then they would be the inhabitants of paradise, and if anyone could die of sorrow, then they would be the inhabitants of hell." This hadith was narrated by At-Tirmizi, who called it good and authentic. Interpretation of the 27th verse of Sura Ibrahim. It is reported that Al-Bara Azib said that the verse, Allah supports the believers with a firm word in worldly life and the hereafter, was sent down about torment in the grave. This hadith was narrated by Al-Bukhari, and Nasai, and Ibn Majah, and its text is given according to an Nasai.